As you know, here in Southern California, you can buy all kinds of periodicals from the news racks on the sidewalk. And I was amazed, quite frankly, at what's out there and what you can buy. But I'm no prude. I'm perfectly happy to see that there is freedom of the press and that you can go out there and buy what you like. Some people are upset about what you can purchase out of these news racks, and Assemblyman Gil Ferguson has brought to the fore an anti-pornography bill that would ban the sale of sexually explicit tabloids from these news racks, and we're going to talk about it today. Assemblyman Ferguson is here in studio with us, Republican from the 70th District. Also with us, William Margold, whose newspaper, the Hollywood Press, he's the entertainment editor there, stands to be a big loser if this legislation becomes law. And I welcome both of you to the program. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Assemblyman, let's start with you. What does your legislation propose to do exactly, and how does it propose to do it?
It's a law, AB 2023. And it's filed now by SB 1962. Those are just numbers on bills. But the bill is to close a loophole in the law. The law of the state of California presently says that you're not allowed to give, hand, or sell material that's described as harmful under the penal code to a child. But through a loophole in the law, it's been possible for them to sell these kind of tabloids out of vending machines, and it's a loophole that we're trying to close so that children on their way to school won't be purchasing these tabloids. The real purpose of the bill is to keep mothers out of jail, because mothers are filling the quarter slots with chewing gum and putting their 3/4 and taking out all the things and throwing them in a trash can, and eventually these mothers are going to go to jail if they keep breaking the law like that.
Are there a lot of kids buying these newspapers?
Well, I don't, personally go around and count the kids that are buying these things, but if I'm to judge from the number of mothers who complain and the number of city attorneys and cities, City of Los Angeles, the County of Los Angeles, and many cities from one end of the state to the other where they have their attorneys contacting me to carry the bill, I would say there must be a lot of kids involved in this, or at least a lot of mothers think their children are involved in it.
How quickly would this all take effect?
Well, it's already the law that they can't sell these tabloids from a vending machine within 100 yards of a school grounds or a playground. This simply extends that to any place where children might be. Doesn't stop their sale from a liquor store or from any store where there's an adult. And it really just applies to tabloids that contain harmful material. Nudity is not harmful material. Harmful material is already described in the penal code and has to do with various forms of intercourse with animals, with sodomy, with each other.
William Margold, how would this affect the Hollywood Press?
Well, it would theoretically put the Hollywood Press in the bookstores and make it a more resistible item, essentially hanging the carrot in front of the jackass, making the public come to it anyway. This is a simple deprivation of freedom of the press, and they're using the newspapers as a lever to go after a great deal more than just simple adult-oriented papers. If they get rid of those, who knows where they stop. They have to be stopped on the streets. I wouldn't allow them into our homes.
Assemblyman, do you have an agenda that goes beyond newspapers like the Hollywood Press?
Well, I don't. Everyone has their own agenda, but my particular agenda is just to make sure that the law applies everywhere where children are unescorted, not just the school grounds and the playgrounds.
I don't think the children are in danger. I think that this is being used as some type of whipping boy situation, as is all essentially pornography that is adult consensual material. I represent a paper called the Hollywood Press. I also represent many factions of the adult entertainment community, and we deal with adult entertainment materials. There's nothing in the Hollywood Press dealing with children. There's nothing in the Hollywood Press dealing with animals. There's nothing in the Hollywood Press dealing with aberrant violence. We censor ourselves from within. We simply want to be left alone.
All right, we're going to take some of your telephone calls coming up as well. For our guest, we have with us William Margold, the entertainment editor for the Hollywood Press, and Assemblyman Gil Ferguson, a Republican from the 70th District. And your telephone calls coming up. 5201-KFI is our telephone number if you live in L.A. or the Valleys, from the 213 or the 818 area codes, 5201-KFI. Or call us toll-free from Orange County or the Inland Empire by dialing 1-800-553-4640. If you're in the 714, area code 619 or 805. Call 1-800-553-4640. We'll pay for your telephone call and put you on the air. 417, Friday afternoon live. I'm Tom Leykis here on KFI AM 640. Time now to go to Suzanne Wadley in the KFI Traffic Center. Over KFI AM 640. LA Orange County weather from KFI. Low clouds proposed legislation that would eliminate sexually explicit tabloids from news racks on the street. With us, William Margold, the entertainment editor for the Hollywood Press, Assemblyman Gil Ferguson, the Republican from the 70th District who is proposing this legislation. Let's talk a little bit about, Gil, maybe you can tell us about this, about what harm this material is doing to children. Now, as far as I've seen, I was a kid once, and I read this stuff, and somehow I survived. I'm not into bestiality personally. I don't beat women with a whip. I bet, all the things you think are going to happen, they didn't happen to me. And I'll bet there are a lot of other adults my age who would say the same thing. Who's being harmed?
Well,
or is this just a political year, the piece of legislation that happens every political year?
No, but it is in response to public demand. I've carried the legislation for 3 years. I carried it before, and it passed both houses and was signed into law by the governor. But going through the Senate, they made me take an amendment that applied only to the cover. So the hardcore harmful material had to be on the cover. And so I'm carrying the bill again to make sure that it includes harmful stuff all the way through the magazine. Now, how much harm it's doing, you have, if you're going to believe one set of psychologists or another about how much harm this does to the child as he grows up, you kind of take your pick among the psychologists. The point is, though, that the law already applies in the state of California, and it's applicable to children, and it's applicable to these vending machines that are anywhere around the school grounds or a park. And so we're really trying to extend the law in response to public demand, and there seems to be a very strong public demand for it.
So you're really not concerned whether there's harm or not, it's just that you say your constituents want you to do this.
Well, not only my constituents, but there's a constituency for this around the state of California. I agree with them. What you asked me, though, is could I prove harm? And I can't. I know that there are psychological studies, and studies have been made around America that show that this kind of stuff is addicting, and it ends up in adding to proclivities among children as they grow up. But I don't know if that's, I didn't do the study.
No one ever died from an overdose of pornography. I'm very tired of hearing what I do for a living and what a lot of other people do for a living, carrying the blame, the entire whipping boy situation for all of society's ills, the reason the Angels are on a losing streak. It's ridiculous. People go into these rooms with the murderers and sex offenders, and they find a Playboy or they find the Hollywood Press. They also find the TV Guide, and they also find the Holy Bible. And what you're doing is simply jumping on a very, very old and beaten horse, trying to ride it to some type of idiotic victory in whatever senatorial or government race you're up with. And this is very tragic. If you're going to go after us, I would suggest you also go after cigarette vending machines, because no one ever died from an overdose of pornography, but people drop dead every day from cigarettes. I suggest you also post guards at every gas station, because I'm sure there are an awful lot of kids that go in there, fill up their cars, go out and kill somebody. You're blaming us for all of society's ills because we're the most visible target. I have here a copy of the latest Hollywood Press. I defy you to show me anything hardcore in it. And hardcore means penetration. We don't do it. I defy you to show me anything dealing with children, animals, or aberrant violence. We don't do it. We deal in adult consenting material. I've never seen a paper jump off a rack and drag a kid and make them do it. Kids aren't going to waste their quarters on what we have to offer. They're going to shove them into Ninja Mutant Turtle garbage.
Well, if you have nothing to worry about, you have nothing to worry about. I'm not carrying this bill because I think it will advance my career. My bill's already been killed.
Yes, it was.
This bill is being carried by Senator Ayala, now. And the point is...
I'm glad you brought that up, because according to the Los Angeles Times, he is in a tight race for re-election in his district in San Bernardino, which goes back to a question I asked you earlier. Isn't it true that these attacks on pornography always come up in an election year, and somebody who has something to gain by going out there and being the white horse, or the white knight on the white horse, is always the one sponsoring the legislation?
Well... I think you get beat up just as much by carrying this legislation from one part of the constituency or the world as you do from the other. But as far as proving harm, you don't have to prove harm to outlaw fornication in the middle of Wilshire Boulevard by two nude people. That's against the law.
But you know that law would be passed in an election year.
And yet it wouldn't cause any harm.
Senator Ayala is a Democrat running against a Republican, and I can just see the scenario here of somebody having to prove they're more conservative than their party affiliation would let on. And here's a perfect way to do it, by saying, I'm against children getting their hands on pornography. Now, come on, Gil, this is how the game is played. You can admit that to us.
Well, I can admit that it's a game that the Democrats killed my bill and then allowed one of their own Democrats to carry the bill back, and it will pass the committee this time. The first time through, they said that they're very concerned about First Amendment rights.
And, well, they should be.
Well, I've been a publisher of a newspaper, a publisher of a magazine, an editor, and a writer, and I know what First Amendment's rights are, and this has nothing to do with that.
Oh, it doesn't, huh? Where do you intend to stop? I brought in 5 pages from the L.A. Times today that could be construed in somebody's situation as pornography. We have here Madonna in lingerie, and 3 ads for lingerie that are far more titillating and better shot than anything that I have in the Hollywood press.
But that has nothing to do with this bill.
Oh, of course it does, because this could be the next step.
Oh.
Once you get rid of X, are you going to go after R, PG, and then who knows what?
Well, I thought we were addressing this bill.
But no,
now, if you're going to address
this
but the world might come to an end in 10 years.
No, but this is a chink in, using this as a lever for your own puritanical gains. Censorship, there's no such thing as a little of it.
Well, you don't really believe that we should allow bestiality to be shown
we don't
in a
have
public
it.
place.
We censor
I know
ourselves.
You don't have it.
No,
you're just one little guy in a business.
What are you talking about? Why don't you bring a paper in and show us the evidence?
Well,
what, you scared it's going to hurt your hands?
I had brought them previously in here when we discussed that.
You should have brought it today.
Well, there are publications like that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the law.
We will apply. We're willing to meet whatever laws you have as long as you leave us alone. We don't deal with children. We don't deal with animals. We don't deal with violence.
Then what are you worried
about? Consent. Well, I'm not worried. I'm concerned for the overall First Amendment rights, because a show like this is in danger if you get your way. You just don't understand, do you?
Well, next your hair's going to fall out of this.
I'm not worried about that at all.
You can extend this any way you want to.
I'm a lot more secure about my hair than you should be about yours.
You can extend this to anything you want to, but this particular bill only applies to harmful material.
See, the thing is, you use that word harmful too harmfully. You throw it around like some kind of
The state of California defines what is harmful.
You tell us what the state of California defines, and I'll tell you if we...
It's in the penal code.
Well, we're not going to jail for these papers. This is a First Amendment situation. Show me something harmful in here. Do you remember a couple of years ago when the L.A. Times stuck a razor blade in a newspaper and put it out in an advertising supplement? That's harmful. Somebody could swallow it. The only way you're going to die from one of these things is eat it.
We'll continue our conversation, and we'll take your telephone calls coming up with our guest, Bill Margold, the entertainment editor for the Hollywood Press, Assemblyman Gil Ferguson, Republican from the 70th District. It's his bill, but it's now being carried by Senator Ruben Ayala, who's running for re-election from Chino, and you gotta wonder what's going on there. But your call's coming up. Stay tuned. Monday through Friday, 2 to 6. Yes, we're here with William Margold, the entertainment editor of the Hollywood Press. Assemblyman Gil Ferguson is the Republican from the 70th District, and he is talking about an anti-pornography bill he wrote, which eliminates sexually explicit tabloids from the news racks. Let's continue with Leslie, a first-time caller from Burbank on KFI. Hello.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'd like to say that first I do agree with Mr. Gil Ferguson, and I'm by no means a prude, okay? My line of thinking is if you want to buy Penthouse, Playboy, and all those other magazines, that's not for me to say no. If you want to buy an X-rated movie, it's not for me to say no. That's fine, but you also go to a store and you ask a man behind a counter for those magazines or for those videos. And the first time I was introduced to the LA Express was about 8 months ago. And I was basically pretty disgusted, for as open-minded as I am, And the reason why I was disgusted is not necessarily what I saw, but what was graphically described, and also the fact that the first thing I thought of was, my God, any child with a quarter can walk down the street and see this, woman laying on the cover, scantily clad, and they're not stupid, and put a quarter in, and that's it. And I just think, well, I'm not saying that it should go away. I'm just saying there should be some control. And if Penthouse and Playboy and all those other magazines, you have to be 21 or you have to be 18 or whatever, you have to ask somebody, then what makes these newspapers any different? Why is it that they can advertise their stuff in a vending machine and these other magazines can't?
Well, why are you isolating out something like a newspaper? Why don't you go after something like a cigarette machine? Do you really feel that kids...
I would love to. So there's no rationale there.
What about going after anything you can buy out of a vending machine, such as junk food, which can kill you? Do you really believe that kids are going to get something out of a newspaper besides smudgy hands?
Yeah, because I'll tell you something. Your comment about spending 25 cents, they're going to go buy a Teenage Ninja Turtle. You know what? I don't know where you've been, but any child that sees something that he or she knows his parents, his or her parents are not going to like, is going to spend their money on that before they're going to spend their money on
Well, that's very interesting.
Turtle.
How do they know that their parents don't like it?
All you have to do is walk down the street and see that barely naked woman on the cover, and you know right off the bat what that is.
Then you've just nailed another coffin in the blame on a family, because that's where it all begins, at home. Rotten sexual education, guilt, sex, frustration.
No.
That's what's wrong with society in general.
Why is it on the family when the family can't control what that child spends with his quarter?
The kid can do whatever he wants, and once he finds out there's nothing in it, he'll throw it away.
Look, well, I'm not saying, you're getting all upset. I'm not saying that
I'm not getting upset. You're the one who's upset. You called in.
I'm not saying there isn't a place for your newspaper. I'm saying the place for your newspaper is behind a counter.
The tragedy of it, the more you tell people they can't have it, the harder they'll get to get it.
Fine,
Remember prohibition.
Then you should be encouraged that it would increase your circulation.
I'm not worried about this economically. I'm worried about the censorship factor, because once you start, you don't stop.
I'm not... Look, I'm not in it any further than I can honestly say. I understand where you're coming from by the fact that, yes, I do see select groups of people saying they want to take it all the way. I personally am calling just to tell you that I don't believe it should go all the way. I believe to each his own. That's fine. But when you're talking about children and impressionable minds, I think it should be off the streets, and it should be somewhere where it can be controlled to a degree. I'm not saying you don't have the right to print that. That's fine. And I'm not saying people don't have the right to buy it. But I'm talking about adults. Okay.
Take a look at today's copy of the LA Times and tell me if that isn't as arousing as anything else on the racks.
I'd have to say that after I read that LA Express, and I did read some of the ads, I'd have to say it is a little bit worse. I mean,
Words, sticks and stones, ma'am, they'll never kill you. Words will never hurt you.
Well, that's a matter of opinion.
That's a matter of opinion.
Right.
I'm secure in the fact that when it gets down to another judiciary situation, as it did the last time with Ferguson's bill, it'll be thrown out because they know they can't just legislate a little censorship.
Leslie, thank you for the call. Here's Peter, first-time caller from downtown on KFI. Hello.
Hello, is that for me?
Yes, it is.
Well, I really have to agree with Mr. Ferguson. I myself cannot explain what pornography is, but I do feel that I can recognize it for myself when I see it. That's just my values. When I was a kid and an adolescent, I was looking for that stuff all of the time. I was thinking about it all of the time. I was jazzed about it all of the time. I was excited all the time. My blood was flowing hot all of the time.
Good.
I wanted to get into this all of the time.
So you masturbated?
No.
No.
I went after the news. I went after it everywhere I could. I went after it everywhere I could find it. I got involved.
Well, what did you do with it once you got it? That's sort of sad.
You see, I met up with a lot of people who were into sex for recreation and to sex for money, and I had some fun there also.
Good. Nice terminology.
There's too many people in that area who are antisocial, deviant people.
Deviant?
Who verge on the who go back and forth into criminal activity, and all too frequently take advantage, moral, physical, and financial advantage of other people.
Because of papers on the racks such as Hollywood Press and LA Express.
Well, I was just looking for every way that I could to get into it.
Into what?
sexual activities.
And you're using the papers.
Yes.
Well, there are also legitimate singles operations that are also on the rack. I have something here in front of me called the Learning Annex, which preaches all kinds of single meeting situation.
Well, I'm just with the way of running it's all too easy to meet up through the type of explicit publications that the legislature is referring to.
Well, we're trying to help the lonely person.
We're running in too many people, too many fairly innocent people. We're meeting up with bad socially deviant people who advertise through the hardcore medium.
Well, then you better not read any of the ads in the LA Times, because those people are out to bilk you as well.
Thank you for the call, Peter. We'll continue our conversation coming up 4:43:17 before 5 o'clock. Tom Leykis live over KFI AM 640. Time now to go to the KFI Traffic Center. Here's Suzanne Wadley. Suzanne?
Good afternoon, Tom.
Congressman Gil Ferguson, Republican from the 70th District. Bill Margold is the entertainment editor of the Hollywood Press, about attempts to ban sexually explicit magazines from public news racks. Let's say hello here to Sam in Pasadena on KFI. Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I would just like to say something. I'm really getting sick and tired of people out there trying to control other people's lives. Nobody in this whole world has ever proven that a picture or word can cause any kind of behavior that's detrimental, other than the fact that if you go to countries where pornography and most everything else, like in the Scandinavian countries, is not repressed, the extent of deviancy is almost non-existent. You come to this country, almost everyone you meet is a deviant, because we cannot continue to slice off all of our rights and still be called a free country. And
Well,
I'd like to have the, I don't know his name, it's probably not important, I probably won't ever hear
Which
about him
person are
again.
you talking about?
The fellow that's for taking all of the papers. And
That's
so forth.
Assemblyman Gil Ferguson. He's right
Yeah,
here.
Mr. Ferguson, I'd like
We've been hearing about him for a long time. I don't think that's going to end anytime soon, but go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Ferguson, would you comment on that?
Well, Sam, I understand where you're coming from. You're claiming that it doesn't hurt anybody, and so we may as well allow that. But if you really believe that, then you'd believe that it's okay to moon somebody on Wilshire Boulevard.
To be very
It really
frank,
doesn't hurt anybody.
Be very frank. I've seen people moon other people, and I've never seen
That's right.
anyone. I've never seen anyone hurt.
Yeah, that's right. Nobody dies from being mooned.
Just because
So,
you don't moon
let's-
anyone doesn't mean it's going to hurt everyone else.
Sure, but let's extend that a little further, Sam, and we have people walk around naked on Wilshire Boulevard. There are a lot of
That wouldn't
things.
hurt me a bit. I've been to a nudist colony, sir, and people walk around naked, and the kids and everyone else, somehow nakedness was here before all of these rules and stupidity.
Sam, you're exactly right. Let me tell you exactly right. Only thing is, it doesn't work in this society. This is America. We have certain values we believe in, certain standards we accept.
Is freedom,
as a
sir, not
norm.
the most important value that we believe in?
That's right. And
Freedom of
if
speech.
you don't have responsibility and regulation, you have no freedom, you have
But
anarchy.
whose responsibility are we talking about?
We're talking about the responsibility of our society.
But why dictate responsibility?
Yeah,
Well, we
how-
do, on everything
Sir,
we do, we dictate
Sir.
responsibility. We dictate the laws. We have thousands of laws.
Mr. Ferguson, why would you have the nerve to get on a program as important as KFI without having one single document that can show that this is all harmful?
Well, there are many things in our society that we regulate that have absolutely
that's
and are
not
not
what I asked
harmful.
Do you have one single if I get hit by a car, I know that's harmful. Can you show me one instance where a picture, a word, pornography, if you will, anything else is harmful?
Well, I just told you at the beginning of the show, if you were listening, that there are many studies that do prove that it is
Yeah,
harmful
but
and it's
why don't you have
addictive.
any of them
I'm
with
just
you?
telling you that there are just as many studies that say that it isn't harmful,
Yes,
but that's
I
not
worked
the
in
point.
psychology for years, and I never once have ever seen anything definitive. If people are going to do this, why don't they go out and really do definitive control group kinds of workups so that they can actually show that they know what they're talking about, rather than really exhibiting their own puritanical attitude?
Well, Sam, what I'm trying to tell you is that's not important whether it does or not. There are many laws in the United States, just thousands of laws in the United States, have nothing to do with anything other than standards and with the values that we all share in this nation.
Oh, so
it has nothing to do with, well, if you let that alone, it would cause a harm, because you could have fornication out in the middle of the street all the time. It wouldn't actually cause anybody to get a disease and die or anything like that from watching it. But we don't allow things like that in this country. That's what it's about.
But you have to have a reason, sir. Mr. Ferguson, you can't go around making rules and regulations that affect everyone in this country without having a good reason.
But of course we do. We deny you the right to fornicate in the middle of Wilshire Boulevard.
Yes, and that has nothing to do with this.
We're talking about pictures, fornication.
No, you asked me if I could give you an example. I just gave you one. It has nothing to do with harming anyone physically, but you can't do it because there's a law against it.
Okay, I saw horses and cows. I was a farm boy. I saw horses
and didn't
cows,
hurt you at all, Sam.
All of the other animals fornicate, if you want to call it that. I called it mating, as we all do. And yet, somehow, I don't feel that my whole life has been destroyed because of it. In fact, I feel that I'm one of the freest, most nicest sexual people I've ever known in terms of my relationship with women.
What this all about is the legislating of morality, pure and simple, and what this whole bill lacks is the common sense to simply leave adults alone. It's really not about kids. Kids are the simple focal point of this because they can't fight back or say anything. They're just simply trying to legislate morality. The easiest target in the world is pornography.
Sam, thank you for the call. We will continue our conversation coming up. 4:53, 7 now before 5 o'clock. Tom Leykis, live over KFI AM 640. Time now to go to Suzanne Watley in the KFI Traffic Center. Suzanne, what's happening out there? With Republican Assemblyman Gil Ferguson of the 70th District. Bill Margold is the entertainment editor of the Hollywood Press. There is a bill pending right now in the state legislature that would ban sexually explicit newspapers from being sold from those news racks out on the street. And we've got many different points of view coming in on the phones, 2 different points of view represented here in studio. Our telephone numbers in L.A. and the Valleys, it's 5201-KFI from the 213 or the 818 area codes 5201-KFI. Or call us toll-free from Orange County or the Inland Empire. Dial 1-800-553-4640. If you're in the 714 area code 619 or 805, call 1-800-553-4640. We'll pay for your telephone call and put you on the air. Let's continue our conversation. Here's Sylvia, a first-time caller from Paramount on KFI. Hello.
Hi, Tom. I enjoy your show.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Hello, Assemblyman Ferguson.
Hello.
Glad you have the courage to go on the show with Bill Margold. I know how much courage that takes. I've been on several shows with Bill.
Oh, good old Sylvia.
How are you doing, Bill?
How come you don't fight me anymore?
Well, I am still fighting. I want you to know that I am a commissioner on the L.A. County Obscenity Pornography Commission.
Oh, the great Do-Nothing Commission, yes.
We are sponsoring this piece of legislation.
Good.
I'll tell you why. It has nothing, Bill, to do with censorship, nor does it have anything to do with the First Amendment rights. We do not want this harmful matter accessible to children. Now, the Supreme Court has already defined for us, as you know, the Miller Standard and the fight we had in California getting the Miller Standard, and that tells you when adults can have access to obscene material. They defined it. I didn't. You didn't.
That's okay. We don't mind living under the adult rule.
Now, and how you could have had the audacity, Bill, to ask Assembly Ferguson why he didn't bring some of that material. Sure, you're talking about the Hollywood Press. Now, you and I both know that you've seen that material. You have starred in X-rated videos.
Of course I have. I'm proud of it.
And, yeah, I know. And you even told me you used to spank women in front of the camera,
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, and you said that you're a masturbatory institute for lonely people.
You better believe it. You begrudging lonely people?
And you
Are you lonely, Sylvia?
And you also have... No, I'm not. And you also have said that you were going to teach America how to get it off.
You better believe it.
To teach us. I've told you that before.
I want to teach America how to get off.
Now,
that's what it's all about. I want to end the frustration.
Listen, Bill. Now, just listen.
Yes?
We do not want this material accessible to children.
Why do we use children as
printed? You can sell it all you want, but it cannot be accessible to children unless you want to hire someone to stand there and authorize and supervise it.
Well, why don't you go after the cigarette machines? Why don't you go after the liquor stores? Yeah, you do. That's the problem. You have too many causes. Isolate one.
This is my number one cause, though.
Number
I still
one
say
cause for today.
You know what?
Because Gil Ferguson's on the radio.
You know what, Bill?
I remember you,
There's still hope
Sylvia.
for you even. There is still
Oh,
even
no,
hope for you.
you're not going to bring God up, are you, Sylvia?
Oh, no.
Please don't bring God
Oh,
up.
I won't.
I don't want to hear about religion
and I
anymore.
want to tell you something, Bill.
Yes.
We're having our first awards luncheon, the Obscenity Commission. I submitted your name, and they turned me down.
Oh, I'm sure they
Well,
did. I hope
you
they
know
turned you
why?
down, too.
Yeah, they did.
Sylvia, I thank you for the call. Mark and Whittier, you're on KFI. Hello.
Hello, Tom.
Yes, Mark.
First, I'd like to say, if you don't know what's harming people about this, you haven't been watching or listening to Barbara DeAngelis, because she'll tell you you're a wimp when you grow up. And,
Why should anybody want to grow up?
huh? Who's that talking on
That's
the other
Bill
end?
Margold. I responded.
Oh, okay. Well, that was just a joke.
You're trying to hear yourself, aren't you, when you talk, aren't you?
No,
You got
I'm
your
not.
radio on, don't you?
No, it's not on.
Well, somebody's talking to you in the background.
Nobody's talking to me in the background.
That's the television he's got on over there.
Yeah.
We're not on TV. We're on radio.
I'm watching that television, Small Wonder. You know, that's
So you're watching a sitcom and calling a talk show at the same time.
Small wonder.
It's going to be an in-depth conversation here, I can tell already.
Just like those people in those newspapers, which you can die from, because if you look at those ads, you'll die from laughter because they're absolutely hilarious.
Thank you for entertainment.
And yeah, that's all it is. It's hilarious.
That's good.
I mean, come on.
Sex is a joke, kid. That's what it's all about.
Thank you for the call, Mark. Joe in Los Angeles, you're on KFI. Hello.
Hello, Tom. How you doing?
Okay.
There's been a lot of emotionalism that's been gone across the airwaves, but hopefully this can settle everything. Maybe not. One of the most important, if not the most important, institutions is the family unit. Okay. Now, one of the processes in the family is the
Tom Leykis live over KFI AM 640. LA Orange County weather from KFI, mostly clear tonight, becoming cloudy. Margold and Gil Ferguson were talking about sexually explicit newspapers on the news racks in the street. There's legislation afoot that would stop it from being sold in the news racks. What do you think? We continue. Here is Sean in Fountain Valley on KFI. Hello.
Hi, Tom. I wanted to comment on Bill. I think that's a pretty stupid analogy about how he says, why don't people do something about the cigarette machines? And I'm sure, Bill, you know a lot of close people to you that smoke, and what exactly are you doing to quit them from smoking? So I'm sure you care about them, right?
Yes, I tell them to stop smoking. I'm much more concerned about that than I'm about what the harm supposedly will happen from reading the newspaper.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that's a pretty...
I don't at all. I think it's much easier for a kid to get to a cigarette that he's told not to smoke in the newspaper.
I agree. I mean, the cigarette machine shouldn't be out there either. And
I guarantee you there'll be no bills to get rid of those.
Well,
they're terrified. We're an easy target.
That's true. And so if people, he wants to take your magazines off the shelf and
off the streets. He wants to take them off. You don't understand. It's not going to stop there. That's what I'm here protesting. I don't care if this bill wins, big deal. So they come into stores and get our papers, but it won't stop there. It's just the first chink in some type of puritanical attack on the rights of people to get what they want to see when it comes to sexually, not even explicit, sexually oriented material, because our papers are not sexually explicit. The term explicit means penetration, means hardcore, and means this term he's bandying about, harmful. It is not harmful. It has never been proven harmful.
Thank you for the call, Sean. Here is Steve calling from a car phone. He was in Moore Park when he called in. Where are you now, Steve?
I'm in Westlake Village.
All right. Well, that's a good ways. What's happening?
Okay, I have one comment for both you and Bill. You both agree on one thing, that words mean nothing and that they can't harm you. If that's the case, why don't we just put the Bible back in schools? After all, it was the first textbook.
Right.
The second thing I have, you both asking, well, where's the harm for the kids? Well, children are impressionable, especially at early ages and everything, and women scream to high heavens about beauty pageants and about women being used as sex objects and everything else. Well, kids can learn that very early age by reading this kind of material and having access to it.
Yes, but kids can see this on billboards. They can see it on bus benches. They can see it on television.
They can't see any of this material. This is harmful material. There's 7 acts.
Here we go.
And that's what's excluded. The 7
deadly
sexual
sins
acts that are named in the Penal Code of the State of California. You don't see them on a billboard. You don't see them on a sign. They are
Well, why don't you
prohibited.
name those 7 acts so everybody can get off listening to them? Well, why not? Well, come on. Did you know them by heart?
They have to do with sexual intercourse and an erect penis. They have to do with sexual intercourse between men and
We don't have any of that in
women.
the
They have to
newspaper.
do with I know you don't. That's why you're arguing a totally different argument.
Well, but you're the one using
I mean, it's
this
easy to
harmful-
argue you're making because you're not dealing with this bill. This bill is very explicit. It is constitutionally written. It's very clear. It's very explicit, and it just applies to children. Now, parents have a responsibility
Yes,
to
they
raise
do.
their children, and parents don't want this kind of stuff on the street. And they've got a perfect
Then
right
let them vote for it.
in a democracy to ask their representatives to clear the streets of this. And at the present time, you're not allowed to put your filth next to a school, next to a playground, or next to a park. And we just want to make sure it's not also next to a restaurant or a bus stop.
Or you're going to legislate the areas it can be in.
Well, that's right. Any place that a child could buy it from a vending machine without an adult being present. And if they want to buy your stuff, they can go in a hardcore pornography store, a liquor store, someplace else. But your stuff can be still sold out in a vending machine because, as you said, you don't have those things in your magazine. So I don't know what you're
Well,
worried
but
about.
neither does any other magazine on the street at this point that I know of.
Well, then you're not watching your own
Oh,
competition.
yes, I most certainly are. I'm looking at everything that comes out.
Steve, thank you for the call. We'll continue our conversation coming up. I'm Tom Leykis. It's 5:30 in Los Angeles. This is KFI, AM 640. Time to go to the KFI News Center where Tracy Miller is standing by with a look at the stories you'll be hearing more about at 6 o'clock. Hello, Tracy. Noon about the issue of sexually oriented magazines and newspapers that are sold from news racks on the street. Assemblyman Gil Ferguson opposes that, Republican from the 70th District. Bill Margold is entertainment editor for the Hollywood Press. Let's continue with your telephone calls. Here's Jeff in Redondo Beach on KFI. Hello.
Yeah, Tom, how you doing?
Okay.
I just want to. I think what's happening is, since the legislature doesn't do their job anymore and they've left it to the initiative process to pass laws, they have to do something to justify their existence.
That's very nice. Well, that's true. You got to pay them for doing something.
Yeah, Jeff.
Well, the thing is that otherwise the state capitol will be turned into a Motel 6 because
Showing
nobody
adult
any need for
movies.
these people. Everything will be done on the initiative.
One of the problems is they have too many bills. They have 5,000 bills every 2 years, and it's just ridiculous.
So what are you wasting time with stuff like this? There's,
because
there's crime.
We
There's
have a lot of parents all over the state who are concerned about this.
Then put it on a ballot.
As I said, one of the reasons I carried is to keep mothers out of jail because they keep putting gum in these slots and they keep taking magazines out and throwing them in the trash, and sooner or later they're going to get arrested.
I think this bill is the most ridiculous waste of time.
Of course it is.
And with all the other problems we have in the state, with the freeways need work, with schools, with that type of thing, and to waste time.
Well, the parents don't think this is a waste of time. They're responsible for their children, and they're concerned.
Where's your district?
The most recent survey done by the Los Angeles Times asking people how they felt about things, the only thing that the public really was concerned about in America was the decline of moral values and the decline of a value system here. That's the kind of thing we're talking about.
So they're blaming pornography for it. Because
why not?
they don't want to accept the blame themselves.
Right? blame this. You know, I've read Playboy since I was 12 years old.
We're not talking about Playboy.
Understand? We will be talking about Playboy.
But I wanted to talk about the bill. This bill hasn't got anything to do with Playboy.
Not now.
Your bill is a waste of time because I don't really think that kids are going to waste their time in this. And if they do, like the guy said, they're going to look at it and go, so what?
But children can't buy Playboy.
More explicit than that.
Children can't buy Playboy now. Don't you know that?
But they can get it. They have access to it.
Of course they can get it, but they can't
from
buy
their parents who bring it home.
Sure.
So
you're perfectly right. You're exactly right, but they can't buy it. And that's what we're trying to do with this bill, to ensure that they can't buy worse things. I mean, worse by 1,000% worse.
Oh, 1,000% worse in your eyes, in your mind, in your morality-ridden and stricken mind. You said that you were a Marine, right?
But you're a pornographer.
You said you were a Marine.
So these things don't bother you.
Were you a Marine? You fought in wars, right?
3 wars,
yes. And many, many kids died in wars to preserve the constitutional right of freedom of choice and freedom of the press. You fought to preserve rights you're now denying other people.
I was also a publisher and an editor and a writer. I believe in the First Amendment.
Good. Then why are you violating ours?
But the First Amendment has restrictions to it.
Yes, and we restrict ourselves.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater, can you?
Of course not.
All right, and you can
Judge
libel
Oliver
people.
Wendell Holmes, isn't that nice?
So what we're talking about here is some things that the state doesn't want to happen, and they don't want to happen. Harmful matter to be sold out of a vending machine.
Here we go, the harmful
because there's a loophole in the law. You can't give it to them. Even you would go to jail if you hand a child.
That's right. It's the catering to child pornography.
Anything that has one of these harmful matter pictures, and it's defined in the penal code. You'd go to jail, but you won't go if you put it in a vending machine and sell it.
Freedom of choice.
Jeff, thank you for the call. Here's Bob, a first-time caller from Monrovia on KFI. Hello.
Yes. Hey, Tom. Before I get into my question, can I ask you something? Maybe you could research it or think about.
Briefly, please.
Okay. How about doing something on these hostages that are coming back that are getting treated like heroes when they were told to get out of Iran anyway, and now we're footing medical bills and everything else like this for them and treating them that way?
I think that's a reasonable point. We will talk about that. Now on to the issue.
Getting to Assemblyman, I wish you were pushing as hard to get Proposition 103 passed in this state than you are for this stupid law bill that you're trying to push right now. You know, and I bet you're really pushing to get a pay hike too. You know, and to keep your honoraria.
No, as a matter, I don't take honoraria. I'm voted against the pay hike. I've advised people to vote against the initiative on the pay hike.
I bet you don't return it, do you? I bet you take it. It doesn't make any difference if you vote for it.
Well, I paid more in income taxes last year than I made in my salary. This is my 5th career in life. I'm not a professional politician, but if you want to beat up politicians, go right ahead.
I'm not. What are you doing? What are you doing for Proposition 103?
I oppose Proposition 103, just like I would oppose it if you asked me to lower the prices on airfare or bread or cheese or anything else. This is America. They set the price by the free market system.
No,
if you don't like it,
you're being bought off by the insurance companies. That's what's happening. And I'd like to see, where is this groundswell of women and mothers that are making the news about all these poor children that are
well, if you live in Los Angeles, it's your city attorney, and if you live in the county, it's a county attorney.
I haven't seen it on the news or anything.
It doesn't exist.
They fly to Sacramento all the time and testify on the bill.
Right.
We're just simply the victims of people trying to make their careers on our backs.
Bob, thank you for the call. We'll continue 5:42:18 now. Before 6 o'clock, Tom Leykis, live over KFI AM 640. Time now to go to the KFI Traffic Center. Here's Suzanne Watley.
Thank you, Tom. On the 55 Freeway North.
Gold and Gil Ferguson. Here's David, a first-time caller from North Hollywood on KFI. Hello.
Hi, Tom. Great show.
Thank you.
I have a comment for both Mr. Ferguson and Mr. Margold. I think that the question of censorship and of making pornography illegal is a very complicated one, obviously. But I haven't heard anyone talk about what's the truth about who's really using pornography. And I can speak from experience because I am part of a large number of people who are recovering sex addicts. And I think that it's important for people to understand that pornography is a drug. It's no different than heroin or alcohol or overeating or anything else. That the majority of people who are using pornography are not being liberated by it or fed by it or nourished by it. They are using it as part of a a shame spiral that's very harmful. And I haven't heard anyone talk about that, but I think it's really deceptive to kind of lump the freedom, First Amendment rights, and to confuse pornography with sexuality and nudity and freedom, sexual freedom, which is a whole different thing.
Well, of course, we're dealing with something. Pornography is an intangible. The term pornography could be pornography, could be war, pornography could be drugs, pornography could be corruption, pollution, and the sexual pornography aspect of it. What is pornographic in your mind? You say you're a sexual addict. What led you to becoming a sexual addict? You couldn't turn it down?
Well, a number of things. It's a matter of what drug you choose. If you're in that kind of, if you're having that kind of a problem, you can choose any number of drugs, and the source of the problem is generally the same. But my point is, I want to get very specific here. I think that your magazine, I would wager that there are very few people who are buying your magazine who are using it in a healthy way, who aren't people who are fairly tragic characters.
Well, the paper sells very, very well, and it sells in what is called a repeat situation, which means not only is it purchased, it's then picked up by second, third, and fourth people who will look at a paper like this and use it for whatever they want. Why should we begrudge people their right to do that?
Well, I don't think that we should. Again, making it illegal, taking it off the streets isn't going to solve the problem. But I think that you ought to be ashamed of what your magazine stands for and what it is. Because
I think the tragedy is that society is ashamed of sex, and they use attacks on pornography to alleviate their own shame.
That's not fair. You can't. We're not talking about sex. We're talking about.
Oh, we most certainly are. The terminology, sex, harmful sexual depiction, quote unquote, out of Mr. Ferguson's mouth.
Well, I don't agree. I don't agree with Mr. Ferguson's approach, and I don't agree with what the reason that Mr. Ferguson is challenging what you're doing. But I'll tell you that there's a big difference. I think that lovemaking and affection and sexuality and nudity are all wonderful things, and they can be healing and they're part of the life force, but that's not what you find on the pages of your magazine.
Depends where you look.
And I'm telling you from personal experience. You had a caller earlier who asked for proof that this was harmful. I can tell you that I've used pornography as part of a very harmful cycle in my life, along with a lot of other people, and I think that you're no different than a heroin pusher who can defend the rights of heroin addicts.
No one has ever died from an overdose of pornography.
Thank you, David, for the call. Rick in Encino, you're on KFI. Hello.
Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Doesn't the Hollywood Free Press now have the Jimmy Swaggart seal of approval?
I wouldn't doubt it.
I think we have to get our issues straight. I really have no strong argument with requiring what amounts to an ID checking capability for vendors of adult material. But, Gil, you keep trying to tell us what's obscenity, about what's harmful to children. So, Gil...
No, I'm not telling you that. The law in the state of California tells you that.
I have a values check for you, Gil. I want to know what you think is more obscene, frontal nudity or fascist news control. Bare breasts or Big Brother?
I don't know. I've been a publisher and a writer and a filmmaker, so since I've been a publisher, writer, and a filmmaker, you got to understand that I understand what you're talking about. I understand where you're coming from. It has nothing to do with this argument. We're talking about the Penal Code of the State of California says that there are acts that are considered harmful acts for children to see. They had to do with sodomy. They had to do with bestiality. And it says if you show that to a child, you're going to go to jail. But there's a loophole in the law that says that if you stick it in a vending machine and the kid pays his 3/4, that's okay. What we're trying to do is close the loophole. Now, that is the law in the state of California.
I'm on the board of directors of the Adult Video Association. We have a $10,000 bounty out leading to the arrest and conviction of anybody who deals in child pornography. So we applaud your sympathy to that respect.
Child pornography is a different thing. I just carried a bill that's named after me in Polanco. It's called the Anti-Child Pornography Act, the Ferguson-Polanco Act of '89. You go to jail now if you even possess child pornography.
Yeah, but you lie to Congress.
Yes, but there's something dangerous.
And the Supreme Court of the United States has upheld our law.
Yes, they have, which could be very dangerous with the Big Brother situation because now baby pictures might be child pornography.
Your friends may be going to jail one of these days, along with you and the rest of the pornographers.
I'm not going to jail. You'll be there way before I get there.
Thank you for the call, Rick. We'll continue our final moments together today. Coming up, stay tuned. 5:53, 7 now before 6 o'clock. Tom Leykis, live over KFI AM 640. Time to go to the KFI Traffic Center and check in once again for closing statements from both of our guests. Assemblyman Gil Ferguson will give you 30 seconds to wrap up today.
Well, I have a bill in the legislature now carried by Senator Ayala that will close a loophole in the law that allows pornographic material, sexually explicit, harmful material that's outlined by the Penal Code in the state of California, will prohibit it from being sold out of vending machines and news racks, and put it where it belongs, which is in the stores, in the liquor store, in the porno shops, where it belongs. If adults want it, they can go there and buy it.
All right, Bill Margot, 30 seconds to wrap up.
The tragedy of it is I don't feel it'll stop there. I think that this is simply a step in trying to censor people's morality, and the only people who are going to wind up making money out of this are the lawyers who are going to have to wind up going to defend the constitutionality of a bill that deprives us of freedom of press and freedom of choice. Thank you very
both
much
for being here today. We appreciate it. Bill Margot, the entertainment editor of the Hollywood Press, Assemblyman Gil Ferguson. All right, now coming up tonight at 10 o'clock, you will see us on